Like I said, we're doing D.H. Lawrence, and I don't know whether you have done any research on D.H. Lawrence or not. So when I say D.H. Lawrence, does the name ring any bells at the back of your minds? No. Hello.
Yes, doctor.
Okay, go ahead. Who's that?
It's me, Hamza. Now I was just
Okay, go ahead.
sorry. What was the question again?
The question was about D.H. Lawrence, whether you guys are familiar with the name, with the guy or not.
Oh, I've only heard about him, but I haven't.
So what is it that you heard about him?
I just know that he was a poet, a famous poet from the 19th century, I think, late 19th century.
Okay.
But I don't know much about his poems.
Okay, nice. Okay, so it's only poetry that you associate him with. You didn't know, or you didn't read about perhaps his novels, right?
No, I never did.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Hamza. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else, guys? D.H. Lawrence. Any associations that would pop up when I say the name, when I give the name? Okay. Anyway, so a British novelist and poet, very popular and very famous, and he has some, non-conformist ideas that we're going to share and talk about. He was a non-conformist in form, in technique, and also in his ideas. He was never an orthodox when it comes to ideas. And this is going to be reflected in his poetry and also in his novels. Very controversial, as you're going to see in a minute. So what is it that we're doing with him? We're having 5 of his poems. And like I said, we're not going to handle them or analyze them in minute details, in an exhaustive manner. We're going to skim through them. We're going to kind of pick whatever confirms the perceptions that other people have of him as a nonconformist, as a dissident poet. Because after all, what we've been doing over the past weeks was to talk about tradition on the different levels, different types and different sets of tradition, and those who challenge those sets of tradition. We spoke about that in poetry. We have done a number of poets, and we have seen that some of them are conforming to the guidelines and the rules and regulations of writing poetry in their given times. And we also have seen people who deviate from the artistic norms and the poetic norms, and even from the traditional moral norms. We spoke about, remember, when we spoke about Plato and how he deviates from the norms, does not accept those norms because they simply come down as as legacy, as inheritance that wouldn't be questioned and challenged. And of course, he is, if you still remember, he was a rational philosopher, and of course, with philosophers, you have to use your mind. Whatever is there has to pass through mind. If the mind does not accept it, so it wouldn't be accepted. Again, we're doing D.H. Lawrence because he is a poetic descendant in form and also in content, or in the kinds or the kind of messages that he was trying to deliver. So how different is he from the previous poets? He's totally different. Again, when we talk about form, we're going to check whether he observes established schemes of rhyme or not. In terms of content and ideas, whether he is also um, perhaps a conservative poet who follows the norms of society, whether they are moral or religious, and we'll see. We'll see through his poems whether he is, you know, a conformist, somebody who obeys the rules and the regulations, or a non-conformist, which means that he was against, following, traditional ways of doing things blindly. And when we're done with that, when we have established the fact that he is a nonconformist or a dissident, we'll go to to some of his novels. We're going to mention their names, and we're going to talk about them, whether they are in line with his record or they are different from his record. Okay. So what are the poems that we'll have for him? Let me check. We'll have a poem that has the name Mountain Lion. This is one of the poems. We also have another poem that has the name Baby Tortoise, and a third which has the name Bat or Bats, and Snake, and Lizard. So when you count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 5, okay? So Mountain Lion, Baby Tortoise, Bat or Bats, Snake, and Lizard. What do you think? What do they have in common, Elena? So these are 5 poems. Yes, they all belong to the animal world, right? We're not talking about human beings here. Perhaps he's going to kind of compare and contrast between animals, the animals that we have here, those creatures that represent the animal kingdom or the animal world, and human beings. We'll see how he's going to handle that, and whether he has typical views as what animals are and who human beings are, or what human beings are in terms of ideas, in terms of concepts. We're going to see whether he is typical. Typical would mean that human beings are, of course, more important than animals, nobler than animals, right? This is the typical view. We're going to see whether he keeps to this typical view, or perhaps he have something else to say. Okay. I'll go through the poems very quickly, and I don't mean for you to spend more time than is needed on the poems. We're going to give the different poems a casual look, and come up perhaps with common threads among and between the poems, and we can make a statement, a general statement about his poems, and then we go to the book and see whether our initial impressions will be confirmed, or perhaps rejected and refuted. And we're going to start with this poem, D.H. Lawrence's Mountain Lion. Okay, this is long, and like I said, I don't want you to kind of spend so much time on it. Just go through it very quickly. Try to focus on the relationship between man and animal and see who or which of them is perhaps presented in a positive light and which of them is not. Okay, you're going to always have this interaction between whatever is human and whatever is and we're going to see whether this is done in a kind of in a positive or a negative way. Yalla, go ahead. Also look at the lines and whether they are long or short and whether you think this is meant or not. The poem is long, but that's why I would like you to show you a part and then you tell me that you're done. Excuse me, you're done so that I can move on. Okay. Please let me know when you have finished this part so that we can move to the rest of the poem. Take down notes if you like.
Mr. I finished.
Okay. Done?
I'm done, Mr.
Yeah, it's if you're not done, I can understand that because you have learned over the past number of weeks that reading poetry is a different experience, and it would need focus. It would need perhaps reconcentration. You read once, and perhaps you need twice, in order to come close to the meaning, right? So, so the title of the poem is Mountain Lion. So what do you have to say about that? So let's talk about your initial impressions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's so beautiful. I liked it. I guess he was talking. I didn't get though if he's talking about himself or is he talking about the perspective of another mountain lion. Like
That's
when
interesting.
he's
Okay, we have a persona. A persona is some an individual in the poem who is not necessarily the poet himself. So obviously, we're not talking about the poet. The one who is speaking here is the persona of the poet, a character, if you like, and the character happens to be, like Pascal is saying, another mountain lion, perhaps, right?
yeah.
Okay, so whatever happens in the poem, Pascal, you said it's a beautiful poem. Beautiful in what sense?
He was talking about like at the end of the poem, he said that when he looked out like into the view, he said that we like we can lose a couple of humans and it wouldn't make a difference. Like we wouldn't be aware, but if we lost like animals or like another mountain lion, it would show because they're beautiful. That's what I got. That's the sense that I got. I don't know if it's right, but
It's correct and not very correct. I mean, and I have a problem with the number. Actually, he talks about
two or a
a,
million.
a million or two
Yeah.
humans, a million human beings. Can you see the irony that?
Here he's kind of exaggerating to prove
Yeah.
his point. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you're putting 1 million individual human being, and side you have one mountain lion, okay, or one animal. I hope you can be able to kind of connect the dots, comparing the perhaps the loss or the death of 1 million individuals, human beings, comparing it to the death of one lion or one mountain lion, and saying that one mountain lion is perhaps better than, or the life of one mountain lion is better than the life of 1 million human beings. Okay, so thank you, Pascal. Can we have somebody else? I don't know whether you share the sentiment with Pascal. Pascal said that she likes the poem very much, and she gave her own reasons. What do you think? Can we have
Dr. Samah?
Yes. Yes.
Can I say that
Yes, you can. What's
of
your
the
name?
poem?
What's your name? Loai, go
Loai.
ahead. Go ahead, yeah, Loai.
Some lines are long and other are short. No rhymes like
Okay.
prose.
Okay, so it's not about saying, it's not about describing, Loai. Describing is nice and everything. Let's get beyond description and talk about the significance of what you have just said. You said that some lines are long and some lines are short. What does the short indicate? let's talk about human beings. When you have human beings, when you have an individual, and we have this situation where some of what he says is very short. I mean, he gives you a word or two, and then after a while, he gives you a very long sentence, and then a very short sentence, and then a word, and then a sound. So, what do we call this? Don't you think that this is tension? Don't you think that this is perhaps an indication that something is not going well with them, that something is wrong? Did you get this feeling?
Yeah, it's like he then gets excited and then speaks.
Okay, yes. So it's an indication that something is going on. Perhaps he is. I don't want to spoil it, and let's let's talk about what you understood. What's happening in the poem before we go to the significance, and before we talk about how form helps with the meaning. Okay. So what did you understand? So what's the scenario?
Yes, doctor. Can I answer?
Yeah. What's your name? Dania. Go ahead, Dania.
Well, what I got from the poem, that the whole idea was kind of revenge, because it's about the encounter of like the men with the lion who noticed that they had his wife or his significant other or someone from his pack between their hands, and all the evidence that they left behind due to the spilling blood on the trees, on the snow, on the cave, whatsoever. And that if they killed these two men, nobody they would like the world would miss them, but not really as like them losing someone from their pack. Like no one is gonna notice this killing lion from their pack yet. Nobody's gonna notice it, only them, like only the animals. And the comparison between like they hesitate, we hesitate, they have a gun, we have no gun, like this comparison is kind of showing like how human kill and how animals react to it, like they are advanced and like outnumbered in kind of a way.
Okay.
Yes,
thank you, Dania. Okay, so obviously we have a situation. What's the situation that we have? The situation that we have is that we have a killed mountain lioness, right? Did you get that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and then we get to know that there are two human beings, and obviously they have their guns, right? And then obviously the animals or the other lions are looking at them, right? And there is obviously some kind of conflict or confrontation is shaping up. It never happened, as far as I understand, it never happened. But there was a great deal of talk about this kind of confrontation, where you have two hunters and you have lions who are kind of geared up in order to defend themselves, right? So there is the life of an animal is compromised. The life of a mountain lioness is compromised. She got killed by those human beings. Okay, and along the way, you get to have statements by the persona of the poem, which happens to be an animal. The persona of the poem is an animal. And this persona or this animal is making general statements about human beings. When it says, for example, that men, the only animal in the world to fear. This is a conclusion. This is a sweeping conclusion that of all the animals, because human beings are animals, whether we like it or not, right? So the only animal that you can fear, according to the other animals, is the human being, right? Why is that? Yeah, for obvious reasons. I mean, human beings hunt other animals, they kill them for their food, they kill them for their sport, right? This is a statement that other animals are making against human beings. The fact that they are very fearful. The other animals perhaps live together most of the time in harmony, but if a human being approaches them, they know that there is danger looming on the horizon, right? Okay, and then you have another question, a rhetorical question that wouldn't need an answer because it's obvious. What are they doing here on this vanishing trail? Who's speaking? It's the animals. What do they say? What are they? They is a reference to whom?
The humans.
The human being. What are they? I mean, they were perhaps in the mountains. We are in the jungle. So why are they there? Of course, they know the reasons. I mean, they are out to hunt animals, right? So what are they? It's what we call, it's a question that is meant to kind of reflect on why those people are not minding their own business, if you like. Why are you messing with us? We're leaving everything and everywhere else behind, and we're here in the mountains, and the only thing you know is that they are coming after us, right? So it's a cry voiced out by other animals, perhaps, against human beings. Why are you here? Okay? And of course, if you're here, it means that we are in for danger. Okay? And then you have this kind of negative suspense. I mean, suspense is building up. What is he carrying? And then the other animal would give a number of choices until we get to know that this human being is carrying a mountain lion, or a dead mountain lioness, right? So in order to perhaps build up this kind of anger that the other animals are feeling towards human beings, you don't get the act of killing right away. Okay?
Hey, ano? Secret sila eh. Ay,
Where are we? Okay. So even when the persona of the poem talks about the dead lioness, he doesn't give us the lioness right away. You have a number of also to build this kind of negative suspense. Long, slim cat, yellow like a lioness, right? Dead. Okay, and then you have this irony. The fact that he smiles foolishly and we smile foolishly. He smiles foolishly as if he were caught doing wrong, as if he would bother killing an animal, as if he was perhaps embarrassed or something. And then we smile foolishly, but for other reasons. We smile foolishly because we're acting as if we didn't know why human beings are there and why he is even smiling. Okay. And then we have the story how those human beings, those two hunters, human hunters, how they killed the lion or the lioness. He trapped her this morning, he says, smiling foolishly. And then you have a description of what happened. And then you have this comparison between the foolish smile of the human being and the beautiful dead eyes of the lioness. Okay. And then a new reality is created on the ground. The fact that this dead lioness won't be able to leap up that way again. She's dead now. And then towards the end of the poem, you have those big claims and statements. The fact that the life of one lion or one animal is worth 1 million human lives. Can you imagine?
Here he's clearly exaggerating as if like the lion is speaking.
Yeah, this is how animals, I mean, he's talking from the perspective of animals. Animals who have been victimized, who have been killed and hunted by human beings for thousands of years. So the animal persona is no more than a representation of all the animals down through the ages.
Yeah, it's just those specific ones.
Yes, the animal persona is giving us a statement, is giving us the perhaps the nasty or the bad record of human beings in their treatment of animals. And then he ends up saying that the world will lose a lot by not having this lioness around. The fact that her absence is going to create a gap in the world, right? Okay, so let's move from this description of what is happening, and normally poems are, of course, based on ideas that the poet or the creator of the poems believes in or embraces. So what do you think? What do you think of the attitude of D.H. Lawrence? Do you think that he is in love with humanity? Do you think that he hates animals? How do you see that? How do you see that played out in this poem?
No,
Is he in love? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it seems that he cares about animals and animal life, and
Okay.
he doesn't support the barbaric actions
Mm.
of humans when they hunt. That's
Yes,
what he.
that's interesting. Excellent. That's a good conclusion. So can we take it a little bit perhaps further and say that he wasn't? The conclusions that he is making about human beings wouldn't come out of the mouth of somebody who loves human beings, somebody who loves his own species. Do you think that he is a lover of human beings?
I think it doesn't mean that if he doesn't support like the acts that he hates humans. He just
Yeah.
think that it's barbaric. So
Yeah,
he
perhaps
doesn't
he's not very proud of human history when it comes to dealing with animals, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, good. Right, let's move to Did I write something? I was taking down notes in order not to forget. It's pretty much what we agreed on, right, in the poem. Let's move to another poem. Baby Tortoise, another animal poem. I would like you to also read it and see how different, how similar. Can we do that? Yalla, go ahead. It's also long, but I would like you to kind of tell me when you finish this part so that we can move on. Yalla, go ahead. Excuse me.
Doctor,
Yes.
can you repeat because your sound is not clear for me?
Repeat what?
What you want from me to do?
Yeah. We have a different. What's your name? Luay, right?
Mahmoud.
Mahmoud. We're reading a different or another poem by D.H. Lawrence. Yeah, Mahmoud. I would like you to. You have the poem in front of your eyes. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, read it, and then
Okay.
we'll talk about it, inshallah.
Okay, and I want to apologize to I'm coming late today.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so
problem.
much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Please take down notes, everyone. Huh?
Just go back a little, please. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are you done? Everyone and anyone?
Yes, doctor, I'm done.
Okay, good. So in terms of challenge, which of them is more challenging, this one or the other one? Which of them, in other words, which of them is more perhaps straightforward? Hello?
The previous one?
Was easier or
Yeah.
more? Was easier, right?
Yes.
This
Okay.
one is more complicated, and also the vocabulary.
Yeah,
Yes.
the previous one is much easier.
Okay. Nice. Interesting. Okay. But in the final analysis, we're talking about animals still, right?
Yes.
In the other one, there was this heavy stress on the comparison between human beings and their behavior and animals and their behavior, right? Is it as is it as clear here? Is he also making those comparisons between the behavior of animals and the behavior of human beings? Did you feel that?
Here, there's no sense of comparison, but a mutual feeling.
Okay. So we don't have comparisons, but you can almost tell, right?
Yeah.
That by perhaps talking about the tortoise and how it behaves, you can almost tell that human beings are the complete opposites, right? A lot of description, right?
I remember he said something about a baby and a baby tortoise. Like a human baby wouldn't do what a baby tortoise would do. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not comparing. The babies of different animals. Human babies and baby turtles. No, it's bigger than that. It's turtles or tortoises on the one hand, and human beings on the other. So the tortoise here is a representation of the animal world. Okay. As much as the snake in another poem is going to be a representation of the animal world, as much as the lizard is going to be also a representation of the animal world, as much as the mountain lion was a representation of the animal world in the previous poem. Okay. So what is it that he is glorifying and talking very nicely about here? Is he talking in positive or negative terms about the tortoise?
Positive.
Positive. So obviously he's not criticizing how slow it is, right? He obviously he's not criticizing the fact that it doesn't do anything. It doesn't wonder at what is happening in the world, right? It never complains, right? Okay.
Yes.
No, okay. So he's not criticizing it for any of that. But who complains? Who wonders at what happens around him or her?
Human being.
Human beings. So by saying that the tortoise does not do that, is he in positive terms about human beings who do just that or not? What do you think? In other words, what do you think? is saying that, let me give you some of the expressions and the adjectives that he used with the tortoise when he says that the tortoise is stoic, or it has a stoic behavior. Stoic is a philosophy of life that promotes the idea of abstaining from the pleasures of the world. If you're a stoic, you don't care very much about what happens around you. So stoicism is about that. And I don't believe that human beings are stoic by nature, right? Are we stoic or stoic? For the most part, we are deeply immersed in what happens around us. We're deeply immersed in material gains and material pursuits, right? Which is the complete opposite of the tortoise, of course, the stoic tortoise, who even does not wonder at what happens around her. So the tortoise is leading a lonely, solitary life. Okay? Is it sad about that?
No, it doesn't
No,
complain.
it doesn't complain, right? Okay, so in spite of the fact that it is fragile, it lives alone, it lives amidst chaos, the chaos of the world, what is happening in the world because of human beings and the wars and everything, and the destruction of forests and everything. The tortoise obviously doesn't care. The tortoise is adopting a stoic attitude to life where nothing matters, right? Okay. Who does the opposite? It's human beings. So, and what is the attitude of the poet? Do you think that he likes it when people complain? He likes it when people wonder at what happens around them? Because obviously, wondering for him is some kind of curiosity that he doesn't like. Sometimes you have people who ask so many questions, right? There is obviously nothing wrong with asking questions, right, on the different levels. But sometimes you have people who poke their nose in everything. And this is obviously the type of people that D.H. Lawrence is against. And according to him, obviously, human beings by nature are nosy and they interfere and they don't mind their own business, if you like, right? And of course, the tortoise would be the complete opposite. So again, this is another denigration, another attack on human beings, but in an indirect way. It's not as direct as the other poem. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yes, good. So do you wonder at the world? This is the tortoise. This is the question is asked or is addressed to the tortoise, who doesn't even reply or answer, which is a statement in and of itself. Okay. So do we have examples of anthropomorphism in this poem? You still remember anthropomorphism? When you give animals the attributes of human beings.
Yes,
When
the
you,
opposite of metaphor.
yeah. So the fact that the poet or the persona of the poet is addressing the tortoise is anthropomorphic, right? Because if you address a dog, if you talk to a dog, you're giving us the impression that the dog can react, right? So you're assuming that the dog is another human being and you're dealing with him on these terms, right? So this is
Yes,
this
it's
is
like you're treating
anthropomorphic.
him like a human.
Yes. And you know, who knows? You know what it is to be born alone. Knowledge, who knows? Knowledge is a privilege given to which of the animals? Humans, absolutely. So when he addresses the baby tortoise and says, you know what it is to be born alone, baby tortoise. Okay? Okay. What else did I say about this poem in my notes? Again, complaining is, this is also very anthropomorphic, right? Because the only animal, obviously, who or which complains is the human being, right? Okay. This is basically. Does it confirm our impressions about? I mean, the second poem. Does it confirm our impressions about Lawrence as a lover of animals and perhaps a hater of human beings? What do you think?
Yeah, he's
Yes,
a lover of
yes.
animals.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Let's look at this. Yeah. Read this one. Very interesting. Done?
Yes, done.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Sorry. So, what do you think of this one? That's funny, or I find it funny. Perhaps it's not funny for you.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like that's the only animal he doesn't like. Finally.
Yes. In China,
Like,
the bat is
yeah,
symbol for happiness,
yeah.
not for me. You know, this this couplet reminds me of whom? In China, the bat is symbol for happiness, not for
Yeah.
me.
It's like COVID-19.
Donald Trump. You know, he hates China that much, and he
Oh,
even he refers to the virus as the China or the Chinese virus.
yeah, true.
And ironically enough, when they say that the bats are responsible for the spread of coronavirus. It all started when perhaps this is a rumor or I don't know whether it's a fact or not. That some over there they kind of suck the blood of bats for religious reasons or something. Anyway, I find it interesting and funny in this sense. Perhaps if I read it last year, for example, it wouldn't have been as funny because of there was no virus last year, right? Anyway, let's go back to the. So what's happening here? So we start with bat and we ended with bats, and in the middle we have swallows, right? So we have a change of tone, right? But perhaps people were under the impression that whatever is flying is a swallow or perhaps a number of swallows. But the rude awakening came when they realized that these were not swallows, right? Those were bats, right? Again, like what's Pascal said, like what Pascal said, this is the only poem where we have disgust towards an animal, and the animal here happens to be the bat, right? Again, you also need to remember that this hatred was balanced by the love for swallows, because obviously here in the poem, swallows were, you know, yeah, it was something they were something nice to be around. If there were swallows in the air, people wouldn't have minded, if you like. But they realized that they were not swallows that they have seen, and that they have seen bats. Okay. So this poem is not helping us. We're trying to confirm the impressions and the perceptions that we have started with. In the two previous poems, we have the poet who seems to be nursing some kind of hatred, some kind of disgust towards human beings, and for their record, obviously, their not very honorable record when it comes to dealing with animals. But this time around, we're having him perhaps directing his disgust and his resentment towards bats, right? Okay. Let's move to snake and see what is happening. Yeah, let's read it quickly. Excuse me. Done? Hello?
Few minutes later.
What?
Few minutes.
Okay,
We
okay.
are done.
No problem.
This poem is so weird.
So what?
It's so weird because he's like idealizing the snake,
Yeah, which is good or bad?
which is bad. It's disturbing.
So does it? Somebody is still reading. Let's wait perhaps for 2 more minutes and talk about it. Okay, can we talk about it?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So let me ask you this question, this direct question. Does it confirm our perception about D.H. Lawrence as an animal lover and a man hater? What do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, who's that?
Me, Pascal.
Pascal, yes. Yeah, okay. So if you share the sentiment, if you agree with us, me and Pascal, please come to the mic. Do you guys agree?
Yes,
that
I
this
agree.
that this poem is a confirmation of the perception taken about D.H. Lawrence as an absolute lover of animals at the expense of human beings.
Yes,
Right?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So what is it that he didn't like about human beings in this? He is, of course, a representation of human beings, right? So what is it that he didn't like about human beings? What is it that he did that is typically human according to him?
That whenever they see a snake, no matter if it's poisonous or not, they ought to kill it.
Yes. And also the idea of perhaps betrayal, that you betray, I mean, human beings in general, not you. We have this, I don't know, I don't want to generalize. I mean, you have people who betray your trust. You trust people very much, and then the next thing you know is that they are betraying your trust, right?
Yes, they're there all the
So,
time.
yes, I think this was the attitude of the snake. The
Yeah,
snake,
getting betrayed by a human being.
yeah. The snake got to trust the persona of the poet, the human being, the poet. Okay, it was, I don't know how they normally behave. Snakes, whether they are too slow. Of course, they are slow, but you have the impression that it was taking its sweet time because um, the poet didn't react when he first saw it. Right, when you first see a snake or any other animal, you pick up something and then you start to hit or aim at it, right?
Yeah.
And
Doctor.
wait,
He waits for this.
and he didn't do that, right? He was thinking, he was having those thoughts, but he didn't, which gave the snake the impression that he is happy with the experience and he wouldn't betray it. But eventually he would, according to the poet, because he is a human being and this is typical or this is expected of human beings, according to him, of course, right? Again, the snake is a confirmation of the idea that the church wasn't um, a true believer in humanity, the fact that human beings are good and everything. No, we haven't seen that. Okay? What we felt is perhaps the opposite, the fact that animals are put at a disadvantage when it comes to human beings. They hunt them, they kill them for their sport, for their food, right? Okay. Okay. So let's talk about examples of how he glorifies and idealizes animals as represented by the snake here. Did you get that when he said towards the end of the poem?
Yes, it was so disturbing.
And so I missed my chance with one of the lords of life. Can you imagine? The snake, according to him, is one of the lords of life. And at one point, he would describe it as behaving like a king, right? at one point he would describe it as a god and looking around like a god. See? Are you getting the idea?
Yes.
Okay. But it's a nice poem. What do you think?
Well, yeah, he saw the snake in another angle that most humans don't really get when they see it. Like, it's typical for us to
Kill them.
kill them, to despise them. When we see snakes, we feel disgust in a way.
Yes.
So he saw it as like a goddess or whatsoever, a royal thing. So that's like
Yes.
really different and beautiful.
A very beautiful poem. I'm hopeful that you, like I said, people would need to read poems more than once. I'm hopeful that you would have the opportunity to perhaps revisit these poems again. And I think I'll have to go to the book. And now, I think by now you know D.H. Lawrence perhaps more than I do, right? Okay. Again, we're talking about D.H. Lawrence, and we're talking about how much of a poetic dissident he is. Again, the link here between the poems that we have just read with D.H. Lawrence and poetry in general would be the idea that there is always this question, what am I? I mean, human beings keep asking this question. And also poems in which animals are there have those questions echoed. So as you can see in the 4 or the 5 poems that we read by D.H. Lawrence, it's not the human being who is asking. Perhaps by answering the question for the animals, the different animals, we get to know who the human being is and what a human being is, right? So the question is not direct. We don't have human beings who are asking the question, what are we or what am I, right? Who speaks for them? It's their actions against other creatures, against animals, right? Are you getting the idea? So do we now know what human beings are? It's not about who, because we know who human beings are. We're not talking about their identity. We're talking about their behavior, right? So what are human beings? According to D.H. Lawrence, they are no more than killers and hunters, right? And creatures who have for their sport and their pleasure the miseries of and the pain of other animals. Okay.
And betrayers.
Yeah, of course. It in the poems those negative traits of the human beings are exhibited like they were never were. I mean, you're talking about betrayal. You're talking about of course, killing animals for no good reasons, even showing disgust at them when he talks about bats and how disgusted he is. This is a typical human attitude. You don't have enough reasons to discuss an animal because he was created, the animal was created this way, right? I'm trying to say that the animal is not responsible for being an animal, right? So 5 Lawrence poems we have in the anthology. Again, and when we have the 5 poems and we have them after each other, so we're in this case we're not or the book here is not moving according to the scheme of Meldon. Remember, Meldon would have alphabetical order when it comes to the arrangement of poems. We don't have that. So we're resisting the alphabetical pull of the book as a whole. So what kinds of poem do you think these are? What sorts of formal structure do they have? Do they have rhyme? We agreed that we don't have rhyme. We missed that. Do they show any traces of anthropomorphic thinking? Yes, we have anthropomorphic presence in the different poems, and the idea that the poet or the persona of the poet is addressing these different animals from time to time. This is very anthropomorphic. If you talk about his attitude, he's obviously adamant about the idea that animals are all good and human beings are all bad. Okay, so the 5 poems should have reminded you of Hallep's The Fly. In what sense would they remind us of Hallep? In the fact that they are written in free verse, and the fact that you don't have rhymes. But perhaps you would give Hallep the excuse that his poem was translated, but that's why in translation rhymes get lost, right? And also you cannot, that's why you have free verse. So Hallep has every reason to use, or the translators to, his translators to use free verse and not to have rhymes. But if you talk about Lawrence, who is English and who is writing English poems, he should have rhymes. But obviously this was also meant by him. He doesn't care very much about rhymes. And if you don't care very much about rhyming in poems, it means that you are challenging the established and the accepted poetic norms or traditions and conventions. Poetry is about rhyme and rhyming. So if you're not using that, if you're suspending the use of rhyming, what is left? Again, it doesn't mean that he was a bad poet, but he's using other things in order perhaps to make up for the loss of rhyme. So what is it that he is using? He's using the idea of repetition. You're going to see how repetitive, perhaps in a positive way, he is. If you go through the different poems, you will see that he has repetition and he's using it to serve certain poetic purposes. So Lawrence manipulates line endings for emphasis. Okay, like you see, one line is long in the middle, and the first one is a little bit short, and the third line is only one word. Okay, what do they express? Of course, they express tension and conflict. That's good, and perhaps sadness and some feeling of anger at the fact that the lioness was killed. So repetitious, I don't know what. Repetitive description of a long, slim cat, hero like a lioness. Remember long. Remember, we remember when we spoke about the first poem. When we spoke about the smiles, we smiled and they smiled. Again, we have anthropomorphic thinking, but it's not as, the presence is not as strong or as big as that in the poems of Lake and Dawn. The poems focus on how animals differ from the people who look at them, right? So animals are painted and portrayed and depicted in a more positive light than human beings. Remember when he was talking to the tortoise, and he says, "Are you able to wonder?" So obviously, wondering, according to him, was not or is not a very beautiful thing to do. And wondering is one of the qualities of human beings. And it's the one quality that pushes us forward. Wondering at things, and it is wondering is associated with this idea of curiosity. And we wouldn't have developed as human beings if we hadn't have this sense of haven't had this sense of curiosity, of course. So again, if we talk about characteristics that he has, I'm talking about Lawrence, we would talk about his repetitions. We would talk about the idea that he doesn't have rhymes. We would talk about the idea that the lines are of not similar length. We have different lengths. Again, if we move to a poem like Bat or Bats, you would have this idea that Lawrence is capturing the emotions of disgust by elaborating the simile of Bat sleeping like an old rag. This is a simile, and he sustains it all through. And the images take on an emotional coloration, which exactly conveys the mixture of bewilderment and revulsion. So it's two. And this is obviously very interesting. So you have revulsion, disgust, and you also have bewilderment, some kind of wonder and astonishment. So does he mean it to be repetitive? Yes, he is. It is something that he perhaps insists on in his poems because it delivers home messages that he wants to get across to the reader. It's as if he's trying to give us the effect of dramatizing his viewpoint. Again, they are meant, and there is a design behind them, of course. He is also an excitable writer, whatever that means. Excitable in the sense that you have all types of feelings. He exhibits all types of feelings within his poems. At one point, he is intrigued. At other times, he is curious, disgusted, or fascinated. And there is no neutrality when it comes to his poems. He's very direct. He doesn't hide his feelings towards his negative feelings, of course, towards human beings. And that would give verbal energy to the whole thing. Okay, this is perhaps the most perhaps amazing or astonishing couple of lines. Astonishing and amazing, perhaps shocking. Shocking would be the most appropriate word. Remember when we spoke about him comparing the death of a lion to the death of 1 million human beings, and he's saying that a lion is even better. And when he spoke about the gap that would be felt and left and created by the absence of the lion. So again, it's fascination with the animal world alongside a pervasive disgust at human culture. Again, perhaps we have to, what is so characteristic of animals and what is so characteristic of human beings? If you look at it, you are going to get to know that animals live in nature. And if you live in nature as an animal, and even people who live in nature, perhaps in villages and in the countryside, you find them very pure. They don't have the sophistication that we normally have with people who live in the city and in town, perhaps. So animals are very pure. Of course, they are innocent. They don't have perhaps jobs to kind of fear for. They don't have those big ideas of ambition and promotion. Perhaps he loves life in its simplest forms. Okay, so life without or minus the complications and the complexities that we now have. Don't we sometimes do that in order perhaps to fly away from the here and the now with all its pressures? You go to the countryside, you go to Idira. Why do people go to Aldira perhaps at the end of the on the weekend, or perhaps in the summer? Why do you think they do that? What is so characteristic of Aldira? And what would be a good translation of Aldira? A translation that would capture the real meaning of Aldira.
Home.
What?
Home.
Home. Countryside.
Homeland.
Village.
Homeland.
Okay. So what the associations of Aldira or the countryside would be purity, innocence, perhaps less pollution, people who are still people who think very highly of morals. They don't lie. They don't they don't deceive and cheat. Right?
They are more decent.
What?
They are more decent.
Yeah, they are very peaceful, and they are, like I said, very simple, right?
Yes.
So this is obviously the attitude of Lawrence. He is trying to say that simple people in the countryside and animals are very simple. They are easy to deal with. They don't have agendas. They treat you in an innocent way. And it seems that he has bad experiences with people perhaps living in the city, where you have a great deal of monkey business, if you like, people doing double crossing each other, doing bad stuff. So according to Lawrence, as seen as seen in his poems, he is elevating and magnifying the instinctual life of animals at the expense of a cursed human education. And in his view, a million or two of humans are more expendable than a single mountain lion. Expendable, it means that you can kind of do away with them, and nothing will happen. I mean, the world wouldn't mess those 2 million individuals, but it would mess one single mountain lion. Very amazing in a negative way. Yeah. Very insulting to human beings, if you like. And this is not a new attitude. Actually, the idea that animals are perhaps better than human beings, and that people who live in the countryside are better than those who live in the city is not new. If you're familiar with the French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau is a famous philosopher who was also promoting this idea, the idea that people shouldn't go to schools because schools corrupt them. People should not live in the city because the city and its laws and rules and regulations corrupt them. People have to live on al-fitra. Al-fitra. You don't get schooling because schooling corrupts you. And this is obviously what Lawrence is also saying, but he is applying it more to the animals. He's saying that animals who, of course, do not go to schools, who do not live in cities, are way better than human beings. Okay, are you getting the idea? Of course, there is a bit of hyperbole in what is hyperbole means exaggeration, right? When at one point he would talk about the snake as one of the lords of life. This big exaggeration when he says that the life of a mountain lion is worth the life of 1 million human beings, right? These are all exaggerations, and they are also they mean to tell you that human beings have to perhaps reconsider how they deal with each other and how they deal with other species like animals. So I mean, for us, Lawrence would be more or less like an apostle or a prophet, but he has his own religion. His religion would be the religion of living by the instinct. You live an instinctive life that is, perhaps free from calculations, from reasoning. You would always compare D.H. Lawrence to perhaps Plato. Remember, Plato used to speak about the importance of reason, our power of the intellect, and the fact that he wouldn't accept beliefs unless they go through the mind, and the mind has to accept them. With Lawrence, we're having a totally different story. We have somebody who is focusing his energies on proving that life away from the mind, life away from intellectual sophistication is way better than life with the mind around. Okay, so why do we have that? Do you think that we need a bit of biography so that we can know perhaps more about Lawrence and why he is acting the way he does? Yes, you would. Perhaps it's good that we have kept this this biographical part until the end, so that we can figure the meanings out for ourselves. So we now know that we are in front of a poet who is not like other poets. So what's his background? His poems are all about tension, conflict, right? So conflict between human beings and animals. And this conflict and this idea of having tension all the time is perhaps, attributable to the fact that at one point he had those struggles and conflicts between his working class father and his more middle class mother. The fact that they belong to different classes, and there was some kind of conflict and tension between them. But he got this idea of always having those polarities and those binaries. There has to be black and white. There has to be innocence and guilt. There has to be animals and human beings, and they all have to be juxtaposed, and they all have to be in tension or in conflict. And he had a number of novels, and those novels were very controversial. And in those novels, he would also promote the idea of the instinct, the idea that we use, that we should live the life of animals when it comes to. He doesn't believe, for example, in the institution of marriage. He is all for open relationships. So one of his novels is Sons and Lovers, where you also have those open relationships. He also believes in sensuality and the fact that, like I told you, it's all our senses and it's all our feelings and nothing else. So you have Sons and Lovers, which was actually banned for its explicit material. You also have, other novels which were equally infamous, like Lady Chatterley's Lover. This is also a novel that was banned because of the explicit material and the promotion of sex and sensuality in them. Lawrence, or D.H. Lawrence, was somebody, a natural human being who believes in nature. And when I talk about nature, I talk about nature as opposed to nurture. Nurture is education. He believes that the more educated people are, the more corrupt they are. So he was advocating simple, education-free types of life. You live on the fitra, you live on your instincts. Whatever your instincts kind of dictate to you, you follow that. So, which means that he would be against civilization, because civilization is best built on education and learning, right? He would be against cities, because cities are also part of the modern civilization, and he would be all the more for the countryside, for animals. So he is often coined or referred to as the prophet of liberation. So liberation from any restrictions, okay? Whether we're talking about open relationships, whether we're talking about, even the stereotypical attitudes in any society. So his poems are proving just that. I think we're done. Lizard, the fifth poem that we didn't have time to perhaps read, is also written along the same lines. The poem concludes: if men were as much men as lizards are, lizard. This is, because it doesn't rhyme. You don't even know where to start and where to stop. What he's trying to say here is that lizards are way better than human beings. And if human beings were similar or were like leathers, they would have been worth looking at. Again, this is very denigrating, and this is an attack on human beings. And this is basically what the whole thing about this guy is about. We have already spoken about it. So again, if we talk about him in relation to tradition, you would automatically detect that he is different. And this is actually what he says. He says that his poetry is the poetry of the instant present. So instant present means the present moment. It's more or less like seizing the moment, because you never know what happens the second moment, right? So if you seize the moment, it means that you're going to enjoy whatever you have. Okay, you wouldn't think of the hereafter. You wouldn't even think of the idea that if you do something good, you would go to paradise, and if you do something bad, you would go to hell. He said he's advocating the enjoyment of the present and the instant moment. And this is, of course, is a very hedonistic, or is a very, pleasure inspired and pleasure induced attitude. Again, he is very different in his form, the fact that he doesn't have rhyming lines, the fact that his lines are not all of the same length, and also in terms of ideas. He does not believe that poetry should have restraints. They normally he normally compares his poetry to the poetry of the Romantics. But he doesn't. The Romantics themselves were also were also people who advocated nature and the living in pure nature and everything, but obviously he takes it to extremes. Again, when they ask him about his poetry and the fact that he doesn't observe any of the rules of poetry, he would say that my poetry is the poetry of is unfinished. It's a process that never ends, and it is the poetry of the present. So on all counts, he was different. He was a violator of artistic norms in his themes and also in his form. And this is basically what D.H. Lawrence and his poetry is all about. You have any questions? Hello.
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
I would.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to ask you about the type of the questions in the finals. How can will it be in this chapter? Are we going to analyze the poem, the poetry, or what? The poem, are we going to analyze it, or I don't know how the question will be in the finals.
Well, I think you'll have essay questions where perhaps one of the choices would be a close reading. Close reading means that you can have, if it's poetry, you will have a stanza, a part of a poem, and then you talk about it. Of course, you relate it to whatever was before and whatever was after in terms of ideas. And this is one of the choices, but you will have so many choices in the final exam. You wouldn't have. I think I mean the BCC wrote something about the final exam, the types of questions, and right, and the number of questions and everything. You still remember that? She sent it to your emails, yes, and she posted that on the LMS. Yes.
Yes, she said the 3 questions, and we are going to choose 2 and write a essay about these 2 questions. But so I don't know about, yeah.
So, like I said, you in all cases you're going to be writing essays. So you'll be writing essays on perhaps topics in the different chapters, or one of the questions can be a poem or an extract from one of the chapters, and you comment on it. You comment fully on it. Again, possible things here, for example, would be the idea of anthology making and how they are made, and their guidelines and their criteria. That would be a possibility. Here you would talk, for example, about T.H. Lawrence and examples of his poems and how different he is in terms of form, in terms of content, right? Again, there are, I mean, the chapter is full of possibilities. You talk about dawn, and there is always this comparison between the fly and the fly by Mellab and the fly by William Blake. So you have lots of possibilities. Perhaps a few days before the exam, we can have an extra class where we can talk about these different issues, inshallah.
Doctor, will the exam be online or at the university?
Inshallah, until this point, it's on campus, inshallah.
Okay.
Okay. You're welcome. I'll stop here with this item and on this note, and I'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.